the Israelites were so, I'm trying to think of the best word. They were prolific. in producing families.
Yes.
This is something that did not escape the Egyptians at all.
Right. This is such an interesting topic that they had this basically a population explosion. That's how the book of Exodus begins. And again, Vayechi, the last Torah portion of Genesis, ended with this family of the Israelites. And Exodus begins and tells us that, these are the names of those that originally came down. And this is a turning point now, a transition from this family into a nation. And you know that Chazal tell us that the Jewish women gave birth to 6 at a time, and whether or not that is literal, the idea is that they really were very, very blessed in bringing forth children. On a mystical level, this has something to do with the whole concept of the Land of Goshen. Because the whole Land of Goshen thing is fascinating, because, and I want to talk to you about that from your point of view as an Egyptologist, and from your point of view as just according maybe to the records and the archaeological records, because it's mentioned so many times at the end of Vayigash. First, we find that Joseph instructs his brothers to say, "Your servants have been cattlemen from our youth till now, both we and our forefathers, so that you may be able to settle in the region of Goshen, since all the shepherds are abhorrent to Egyptians." So Joseph's goal all along was for the Israelites to settle in Goshen. Then again, we read in chapter 47, back in Parshat Vayigash, Pharaoh said to Joseph, saying, "Your father and brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. In the best part of the land, settle your father and your brothers. Let them settle in the region of Goshen." And so here again, in the end of Parshat Vayigash, in verse 27, "Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the region of Goshen." So first of all, I would like to ask you if we know exactly where this was. It sounds like it was an independent part of the country, and Pharaoh is describing it as the best, or maybe the most lush, the most fertile area for the Israelites' flocks. But before you tell me where it was in terms of the reality of the map, I want to share with you just a fascinating thought, and I think you're aware of it because you're such a Torah scholar. But I learned recently that this is not just coincidental or just haphazard, but that there's a back history to this whole Goshen thing, because we see that this is the area that became kind of like the ghetto. This became like the Jewish region. But believe it or not, Chazal talk about how the first Pharaoh that we learned about back in the time of Abraham, because they're all called Pharaoh, right? But that Pharaoh took Sarah, and very quickly he was saved by divine intervention from anything happening. But Pharaoh was quite obsessed with Sarah, with Sarah's beauty.
She's beautiful,
and inside and out. That's talking about my mother now, so watch out. So anyway, what happened was he was obsessed with her. He really had this thing for her. And then when he let her go, our sages tell us that he wrote a contract of all sorts of gifts, all sorts of precious jewels and cash and property. And that Pharaoh actually willed the land of Goshen to Sarah.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so here Joseph is saying this is where we want to go, and make sure that you tell Pharaoh, and make sure that Pharaoh puts you in Goshen. It was supposed to be theirs anyway, but why? What is this connection between that Pharaoh and Sarah and the land of Goshen? So there's some kind of very, very deep idea. Now you know that the Egyptians are characterized by verses in Tehillim, in Psalms, and by insight of our sages in the Torah. The Egyptians are characterized as being very licentious and very, very steeped in a tremendous immorality. And there was something about this land of Goshen that actually kind of like, how should I say it? exuded a certain kind of sexual energy, or it encouraged. There was something about it that had a very powerful force in it, and that's why Pharaoh wanted to be there with Sarah, and that's why when he couldn't have her, he said, "Well, at least I'll know that your descendants are there." And he was up to no good in that idea, in that he was trying to somehow imprint this kind of negative connotation on Sarah's descendants because of his particular fixation and because of his sexual direction. But the thing is that, like many things in life, everything is up to free choice of a person, and things can go either way. And in general, I mean, the whole concept of evil is basically a contortion of positivity, contortion of creativity, because it's up to a person's free will. And so what I'm trying to say is that here you have this population explosion, you have this positive sexual energy, as it were, that the Jewish women, and we can talk more about this because this was actually one of the devices of Pharaoh as the portion of Exodus opens, but that he tried to separate the men and women. He tried to prevent the Israelites from having children. The Jewish women, with tremendous self-sacrifice and with pure and heavenly intentions of bringing more children into the world, they really risked it all to have more children. But all this is taking place in the land of Goshen, which was kind of like the double whammy back onto Pharaoh. Like he intended to kind of like mess them up and to kind of like degrade and plunge, as it were, the Israelites into like a vortex of negative sexuality. But instead, the Jewish women were able to turn that around and harness that energy, as it were, in a positive way, which is basically what sexuality is all about. It's something which is the greatest gift that Hashem gave man, to be able to imitate the divine, to be able to bring life into the world, to be able to have that kind of union, but yet at the same time it is something that can become the total unraveling of a person, and it becomes totally self-serving, and that's of course the secret of circumcision as well.
Right. Well, the land was, the Jewish people have always, especially in Eretz Israel, they have such a deep connection to the land. The land is affected by their behavior. We see this in the story of the flood, how the whole earth had become corrupted by humanity. And you have Goshen, which was the most verdant plot of land in all of Egypt. So that reflects that kind of
what is as if Pharaoh tried to take that verdancy, fecundity, and
fecundity,
and he tried to somehow like twist it and imbue it with some sort of negativity, because it had a certain kind of natural flow of energy. It
living there, because of the lay of the land and all of this rich black soil that was washing down all through Egypt, it all washed down to the Nile Delta, and it encouraged this a life of
fecundity,
fecundity, production, fruitfulness,
of reproduction. Right. Again, not that that's the whole reason why they were able to have so many children. It wasn't like they were just in the right place at the right time. Again, there was a tremendous amount of dedication and self-sacrifice and heavenly intentions. But the whole thing was set up in such a way that sort of facilitated this to happen, much to Pharaoh's chagrin, to the present Pharaoh's chagrin.
Anyway, but what's interesting is that you have shown us that God has directed the wives of Israel to turn this idea that Pharaoh had to use the sexual aspect against Israel, and the wives have turned it around.
Right.
And they've elevated.
That's the thing. In other words, again, the original Pharaoh in Abraham's time had this thing with Sarah, and he tried to somehow, in his fantasies or something, he tried to somehow imbue the future and that land with some sort of holding on to her and some sort of a thing that he had, and that was part of the whole gifting of the land of Goshen, which he imbued with this kind of like energy, and they used it for the good.